That a person from Clarence Thomas's beginnings could reach the Supreme Court reifies Americans' fondest dream of itself as a country that greets individual capacity with boundless possibility. Mr. Thomas was born in 1948 in a shack with one electric light and no running water in the isolated hamlet of Pinpoint on Georgia's coast. When he was about 7, he moved with his mother and brother to Savannah, where she worked as a housekeeper, and they lived in an apartment that also lacked plumbing. Then his mother sent the boys to live with her parents. The grandfather, they called him Daddy, having little relationship to their own, put them to work selling heating oil during the school year and planting crops in the summer. As he deemed necessary, he beat them, and he never praised them. Racism, in its overt and insidious cruelty, bore down on Clarence Thomas from his birth. He drank from black-only fountains and went to black-only schools, and even there his dark skin set him apart. When the teacher stepped out of earshot, lighter-skinned students mocked him as ABC, America's blackest child. Planning to be a priest, Mr. Thomas went to seminary, but his calling faded as he realized the Catholic Church spared little of its righteousness for confronting racism. When he learned that Martin Luther King Jr. had been shot, his vocation vanished. "That's good," he heard a student say of King. "I hope the son of a bitch dies." After quitting seminary, Mr. Thomas tried to return home, but his grandfather, who had the third-grade education, kicked him out. "You'll probably end up like your no-good daddy or those other no-good Pinpoint Negroes," he said. Mr. Thomas considers his grandfather the greatest man he ever knew. Fearing he might never overcome segregation in a nation so racist, Mr. Thomas marched and rioted. He also got himself into Yale Law School, only to discover a more insidious racism. In seminary, he was told he was succeeding despite his race. At Yale, he felt suspected of succeeding only because of it. He came to fear he would never escape the stigma of racial preference. He drank too much, got divorced, and struggled to make ends meet, even after he became chairman of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission under Ronald Reagan. American Express cancelled his card, and he was almost evicted from his rented apartment. The list of groups who wounded Clarence Thomas is long. Light-skinned black people who believed themselves superior, white conservatives who assumed a black man could not share their views, black liberals who believed a black man should not share such views, white liberals who believed that too, perhaps most the rich white men, including Joe Biden, who had the gall during his Senate confirmation hearings to question his commitment to racial justice and then to torment him with accusations of sexual harassment, which he denied. Mr. Thomas had played by the rules, he writes in his autobiography, My Grandfather's Son, only to learn that whites could change those rules whenever they pleased. It had always been that way and always would be. To try to see through Justice Thomas's eyes is to glimpse that he might feel America's elites owe him something, even perhaps a $500,000 trip by private jet and yacht among the islands of Indonesia. As a justice, he gets to make the rules now, or at least to interpret them. In early April, the investigative publication ProPublica revealed that over 2 decades, Justice Thomas has accepted luxury trips almost every year from Harlan Crow, a right-wing Texas billionaire, without disclosing them. It is an old Washington tale. Public servants, journalists too, rub elbows with lobbyists and lawyers who make far more than they do. It may be hard to pity Justice for making $285,400 a year, but it is not hard to imagine some justices pitying themselves just a little as they sit listening to arguments from lesser, richer lawyers in bespoke suits. The downside of life tenure is that they, unlike the senators and generals they know, will never cash in as lobbyists, but they can find other ways to spend time in what Francis Scott Fitzgerald called the consoling proximity of millionaires.